in secrecy, in sacredness, pray. The kingdom of God is within me, and God's grace is flowing. There is no power in heaven or on earth that man hasn't sought to meet the needs of the earth, and man has failed. There is yet one power that man has never sought except the few mystics of the world, and that is the power that is within you. This is the secret. The power that men are seeking in religion, in God, in church, in books, in teachers, the power they are seeking to bring peace and plenty on earth isn't to be found where they're seeking it, because it exists only within you. And you cannot use it. You can only permit it to flow from you by your recognition, by your realization of it within you. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. Be still and know that I, the God within you, is the power of peace on earth, is the power of health and harmony and wholeness, is the power of happy relationships, is the power of infinite abundant supply for everyone, everywhere. But this power is not in heaven, and it's not in earth, and it's not in a book, and it's not in a building, and it's not in great teachers. This power is within individual you. Yes, it's within great teachers. In the same way it is within you, but in no greater way. We are all equal before God. And the grace of God that has given spiritual power to one has given it to all. Only a few have access to it. For only a few have learned that the power of God is made manifest only in silence, in stillness, in quietness, in confidence. As you walk this earth realizing the kingdom of God is within me, you are really releasing this power into the world. It's flowing out from you. But if you try to push it out into the world, you'll find you've lost it. If you try to use the power of God, you'll find you've lost it. You only have it when quietly, peacefully, confidently you realize all of the grace of God is within me. All of the power of God is within me. I need only be still and know that I, in the midst of me, is God. And then do your daily work, whatever it may be, whether it's housekeeping or painting pictures, or whether it's building buildings or ministering to the sick. Do it. Do it. But realize that you are just the witness to God's glory, that the kingdom of God is within you and it is always flowing. Then you will be told how your very presence makes the presence of God felt. Your very presence gives peace and comfort and uplift to people. Not because you're doing anything, not because you're using truth, not because you want to be a blessing to your fellow man. No, merely because you have learned the secret. Stillness, quietness, be still, and let God's power flow. Let God's grace flow, without any help from me, without pushing it, trying it, without begging or pleading for it, and without any belief that I am spiritual, or you are spiritual, or he is spiritual, or she is spiritual, because it isn't true. There is only one Spirit, and that is God in the midst of you. And as you realize that, that very Spirit flows out from you. Release God from any obligation to you. Release yourself from any belief that God owes you anything. Release yourself from any belief that you need anything of God. For you're dishonoring God if you're holding any thought that God is withholding from you wisdom, integrity, loyalty, fidelity, justice, harmony, abundance, divine sonship, in other words. And if you believe that any quality or quantity of divine sonship is missing from you, and you're begging God for it, you're dishonoring God. But whatever qualities seem to be absent from you will quickly begin to appear as you learn to honor God. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart. By knowing, God, thou art ever closer to me than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Father, thou knowest my need before I do. And it is thy good pleasure to give me the kingdom, therefore I will rest. I will rest in this assurance. I will not seek, I will rest. Release yourself from any belief that God is separate and apart from you. If you make your bed in hell, God is right there with you. If you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, God is right there with you. And your realization of this, your acknowledgement of this, brings the presence of God into activity in your individual experience. Now, the reason that this is important to us is this. There is no power up in the sky that we can appeal to save this world from catastrophe. But there is a power, and that power is within you. One with God is a majority. Where two or more are gathered together, all of the Christ is right there with them. And so it is that the power to establish peace on earth is within individual you and me. But not by boasting, not by bragging, and not by telling our fellow man, but by going and telling no man. Show thyself only unto the priests. In other words, share this truth only with those whom you know are spiritually enlightened or are ready to be enlightened. Because only in secrecy, the things that you know in secret will be shouted from the housetops. The prayer that you pray in the inner sanctuary of your being, God will reward openly. But the prayer that you voice openly will forfeit God's power. I'm not making this up. I'm quoting to you from the New Testament. If you pray to be seen of men, if you pray in synagogues and temples and churches to be seen of men, you will have men's approval, but you will lose God's grace. In secrecy, in sacredness, pray. The kingdom of God is within me, and God's grace is flowing. And keep your finger on your lips and let no man know that you are praying this prayer, and it will not be long until you will see the fruitage of it in the outer world. You will see it in your families. You will see it in your neighbors. You will see it in your business. And eventually you'll be wondering why the leaders of the world all of a sudden have evolved brilliant ideas, or have had a change of heart, or are starting to get intelligent. You'll know deep down within you that it was because you released the presence and power of God into the world where it could function. And you did it by knowing the kingdom of God is within me. Thou couldst have no power over me unless it came from God. There is no power in the whirlwind, only in the still small voice. There is no power in the storm, the tempest. There is no power in madmen. There is no power in ambition, lust, greed. Power is in the still small voice within you. And as you learn to keep your finger on your lips, as you learn to tell this to no man, sharing it only with those who by their dedication and their devotion have shown their readiness for it, you will then find that we are releasing this into the world, and the world will respond. You see, if there was any use of telling this to mankind, it would be a very simple matter to do it. 2 years ago, a man offered us $10 million, which is about 40 million golden, to go on television and tell this. And it could be done for that sum of money. But do you think the world would listen, or would it mock? You know the answer. So when I travel the world, and it takes me years to get around this world to tell it to small groups, remember, I could be doing it in one night in a studio in one city and never have to leave home, and save all this trouble and all this travel and all this work, but it wouldn't avail. And so I go only to where there are those who are showing their dedication to this message through their study, through their practice, through their financial support. In some way, everyone that I talk to has shown me that they have an interest in truth, that they have an interest in this message, that they are giving of their time and of their effort and of their substance. And then to those I can say this and be sure that they understand it, that they receive it, that they respond to it, and that they will put it into practice, and still tell no man. Only when you're sure, as I am sure, that those who sit before you have dedicated themselves to a search for the true God, for an understanding of real prayer, efficacious prayer, the prayer that availeth much, then in quietness and in confidence and secrecy and sacredness impart this: the kingdom of God is within you, and you don't have to do anything or think anything to release it in the world. You only have to know it's there and then be still. You only have to know it is there and then be still. It will then do its own work. You have released it by your acknowledgement, by your recognition, by your resting back from taking thought. You have released it. Fortunately, you don't have to wait until the capitals of the world declare world peace, to prove that this is true, within days you will begin to see events taking place in your life, in your mind, in your body, in your family, in your household, in your business, and you will know that this principle is at work. It is manifesting itself, proving itself. And then you will know that these other things are merely a matter of time, matter of faithfulness. Where there are 10 righteous men, their city will be saved. And we'll have 10 here, and we'll have 10 there, and we'll have 10 somewhere else, until this power of God will be released on earth. And then nobody will be able to take credit for it. That's the glory of this. Nobody can take credit for it because it's always been there, and no one can use God's power. No one can have a great reputation for it. On the contrary, the greater the power that flows from an individual, the less the individual is as an individual, and greater only as a child of God. There's no room for bragging or boasting. We won't even afterward be able to go out and say to the world, we saved the world. But we will know within ourselves that releasing God into the world did it. For where the Spirit of the Lord is, where the presence of the Lord is, where the consciousness of God's presence is, there is freedom, liberty, justice, equity, and equality. And where is it? Within you. It's within you. And that's enough to know. Release God from any obligations and let God perform his own work. Thank you. In secrecy, in sacredness, pray. The kingdom of God is within me, and God's grace is flowing.